Okay, it is now 6 o'clock and we're calling this meeting to order. Shall we stand to say the invocation pledge? Mr. Henry, do you like to do some prayer?
Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We ask you to be with the committee today and the participants here at this meeting, and bless them all and help us to make the right decision. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
We do have a quorum. All right, my name is Julia Payne.
Brent McWaters.
Isha Jones.
Mike Pitman. John Bledsoe.
Okay, now we're going to open the public hearing for any comments. Anyone want to start? Ms. Kelly, is that for you?
Yes, my name is Kelly Axton. I am here to represent the residents and homeowners over in the First Baptist Church area.
Would you state your address?
My home address is 312 Doris in Tanglewood. We have property on Dunham Street, which is very close to First Baptist Church. I am encouraging or hoping that the zoning committee will keep in mind that the residents of our community come first, and this will have a huge impact on the residents in that area. It is common knowledge that people live in residential areas for the tranquility, and we do choose not to have that a commercial building, and hope that you would not zone that as commercial. It's frustrating when things are zoned a certain way and things are just here and there changed. It's frustrating to me that that happens with city ordinance as well. We've been down that road with ordinances where rules are made and they're changed. That's very frustrating to me. There was a time that my mother-in-law lived on Dunham, the property that my husband now owns, tried to get her property zoned commercial, and it was denied. Very close to this same church that they are now asking to have zoned as commercial. I encourage you, please, for the sake of the residents in that area, to leave this residential, not zone this commercial. I don't feel like that this is in the best interest of our community. Also, I would like to say that we as city officials and leaders in this community should uphold certain standards, and we ourselves should have to abide by certain standards and maintain our own properties that way. And I'll have to say that there are some of us that do not. And I would encourage you to take a look at, for us to take a look at ourselves as well. Again, I hope that you will consider, please, not to zone this commercial in the benefit of the residents, not only for the fact that we don't know what will happen. I don't care what kind of stipulations are said that will be put on this. Stipulations go by the wayside after time. Change in people, change in leadership. Hopefully you'll consider not to zone this commercial. And just keep in mind that we are here for the citizens of the community. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak?
Good evening.
Good evening. If you would state your name and address.
Tammy Tullis, 200 Jordan Avenue.
My husband and I are directly across from the church, diagonally, within 200 feet of the church. We bought the property 2 years ago, built our home there, and we just recently purchased the property directly behind us. We chose this neighborhood because it's quiet, it's established, it's one of the few older historic neighborhoods left in Cleveland. At the time that we moved there, the church was renovating to move into the Family Life Center, and we were under the impression that they would eventually demolish the original church building. So we really didn't have any concerns about moving there. Now our concern is rezoning the block to commercial will affect our home values, the quality of life, most of all, the uncertainty of what will go in if it is non commercial. Rezoning doesn't benefit our residential area. It only creates spot zoning. It only benefits one entity and is detrimental to the surrounding area that is zoned residential. Is this really consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and does it benefit the city as a whole? What is the justification for the variance if it is granted? It's our understanding that the restrictions will be put on the property, but our question is, who is going to make sure that those restrictions are imposed? Who's going to be responsible for enforcing those? And do they have the resources to pursue the necessary procedures that it takes to enforce these restrictions? So I ask you tonight to consider how this decision will impact our neighborhood, our city, and do what's best for the majority stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dawson.
The floor is open.
I'll be short. My name is Donald Fittis, and I live at 501 West Houston. And I just want to speak, just also reiterate that we would prefer this to become a commercial property or get rezoned. We moved here in 2020 in July, and we were told similarly that this would remain a church. That's part of the reason we purchased there. We're across from the park and the church, and we prefer it to stay residential. So,
Thank you.
My name is Fred Terrell. I live at 403 Dudley Street. I'm not in the 200-foot radius of this property, but it's in my neighborhood. And I was on the zoning at the time zoning came into the city. And this is back when Glenn Barnhill was Public Works Director. At that time, he started, and we did finally get this addition has got a historical rating. And I don't know of any other city in Cleveland that does. So to take something like that, historical as it is, and put a commercial piece of company in commercial, no matter what it is, it's just not right. When they did the zoning, they came right up Cleveland Avenue, and there all the way to Washington Street was made commercial. That includes right behind the funeral home in the next block. I really would like to see that move back. There's enough room there in that one block to do anything commercial. You got a funeral home, you got a car dealership, you got lots of things there. I just don't think, other than that, this would be spot zoning. It's not because it's right at Cleveland Avenue. So I would like the board consider the fact this is a residential area and it's thought very highly of the houses that are there. I know the city here was inaugurated in 1935. My home was built just a few years after that, 1940. There's a gentleman who lives right in the corner across from the church, and his name is Furlow. He used to be a teacher here. That home is a craftsman home, one of the few houses put together from the Sears Roebuck catalog. So all this has got history. So I wish we could maintain that history. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Terrell.
My name is Sean McDonald. I live at 408 West Houston, right across from the church. I purchased my house in the last year, and I spent an awful lot of time and money and effort restoring my home that I've been taking care of for a long time. And it'd be a real shame that I put all this effort into a house that I'm fixing up to be a part of this neighborhood. You know, to beautify the neighborhood. It'd be a shame for the property right across from my home.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Ann Farlow. I live at 312 West Houston in the Sears and Roebuck home. And we have been residents of that home for 41 years. The Western homes there. And we have enjoyed the neighborhood. We very much would like to continue in our retirement to have a peaceful neighborhood. We've worked for the schools, we've worked in the community. We love this community. Home is a place you go to try to escape the busyness and noise of the outside world. I dread to think of that in church. I look out my kitchen window, and I can see across the First Baptist parking lot, and I can see the sun going down. And now I wonder, how long will I get to see it? I have friends at the First Baptist Church. This is nothing against them. I've worked alongside them in the schools for 35 years. But I respectfully request that you very carefully consider and please don't sign this motion. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else want to speak up?
Please go ahead.
My name is Tommy Hammond. I'm the pastor at First Baptist Church. And I just wanted to speak, if I could, a little bit about why we have brought this request before you. And hear what I've heard so far. I want to say to everybody here, the residents, we're neighbors here with you. And the last thing we want to do is to bring any kind of hurt or dismay or disrupt our neighborhood in any way. This is in some ways, it's a sad occasion for us because we don't want to do this. But we're here actually asking for you to help our church. Our church has a long history in this community as well. We've been here over 100 years. We've been in this location for a long, long time. We have committed our church has committed itself. It's a part of our service to our Lord, to serve the community, and we've tried to do that. We've tried to be good neighbors, but the situation we're in is that we have moved out of all of those buildings except our original old beautiful sanctuary. There are other buildings we still use right now, one block on the part we're trying to zone commercial, or we've asked you to zone commercial for our children's ministry. We began the process of moving in about 2 years ago, not knowing what we were going to do. But we have moved our worship into our Family Life Center, which is one block up. We've moved all of our offices over there. And the reason is simply we don't have the resources to continue to take care of aging buildings. The sanctuary was built, I believe, in 61 or 62. We've got another building on there that was built in the 1940s. And just over time, we've been trying to maintain and keep it up. A lot of times we're doing it with spit and duct tape, and we just don't have the resources to do that anymore. And so we did think when we first started that we would maybe be able to rebuild on that property. We come to realize it doesn't look like we're gonna have the resources to do that either. We got to thinking about, for 2 years, that property is sat vacant. And one of the things that we think about in our community is we don't want those properties to continue to sit there and deteriorate and be vacant. I think that would be a terrible witness to our Lord Jesus Christ, to our church. We have seen that property begin to be noticed by part of our homeless population. There are a lot of things that happen when that properties are left vacant, and so we started trying to decide what we need. What we would like to do, as we are asking, we're asking the community, we're asking you, the city, our neighbors, we're asking you to help us because we want to continue to serve. We're not moving. We still got property there. Whatever happens there, we're going to be neighbors in the community as well. And we would like your help. I think it would be a win-win for the city. And we feel like if it's zoned commercial, then it would be worth more than if it's sold as commercial property. That has never been taxable to the city. And, there would be tax revenues that the city would gain from whatever commercial development goes in there. So we do think it could be a win-win. I know it's been said, and I know I can't make any guarantees to anybody, but we've talked about it, and we absolutely intend to bring something. I talked to one of our people today, and his words were, we want to bring something good and classy into that place. We're not going to bring something in that will disrupt the community. One of our reasons for wanting to do commercial also is our hope is that if we zone it commercial, that someone can come in and buy that from us, they might be able to preserve some of the historic buildings on that property. We have, like I said, we have 2 buildings that I would consider historic on there that we don't have the resources to take care of, but we hope someone will be able to come in and buy that property and keep those buildings. I know they would have to renovate and do some things to it. If it is not zoned commercial, it's left residential, we still will try to sell it. We don't know what luck we'll have, but if it's kept residential, I can almost guarantee that those buildings will all be torn down so they can be built over again. And so we have put a lot of thought into this, and I sincerely mean to the residents of our neighborhood, where we will continue being neighbors. We don't mean to cause you any grief or concern. We still want to be good neighbors. We still want to work with you. We've got plans in place for exclusions that we hope we can bring something in, even though it's commercial. They would be something that would benefit not only our community, but our neighborhood, and it wouldn't disrupt the neighborhood. That's our heart. I know somebody's spoken to this, and I can't guarantee you the future, but that's our heart. We are going to continue to be here. We are going to continue our commitment to serve the community, our commitment to be good neighbors, and we want to bless, serve, and benefit the city of Cleveland. That's why we're here. And so, really, we're asking for you to help our church. We've had, as I said, a long history here. You know our people. You also know the people, the integrity, many of you do, of the people that are in our church. You know their heart. And so we are asking for this, knowing it's in an ideal world. If we had the resources, we wouldn't be doing this. We would be keeping this facility. We would be upgrading, remodeling, whatever, keeping those historical buildings and doing whatever we could. So we respectfully ask you to consider our application. And these are the reasons why hear our heart that we want to continue to serve the community and be good neighbors. Because whatever goes in there, they're going to be our neighbors too, most of them, a lot of people. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Floor is still open, anybody else?
My name is Rick Axton. I own some property there on Dome Street, 200 Dome Street. Historical piece of property, as a matter of fact. The house was built before the turn of the century, back in the late 1800s. So just goes back to that part of town being a historical district. Some of the questions that I would have on zoning this piece of property commercial is the whole block on the zone commercial? The whole block. Okay, and you intend on selling everything within the block? The whole block. Are you going to retain some of the property there for your use?
Right now, we're going to try to sell it.
The whole block. So when you sell the whole block, then you lose control of the block. And it doesn't make any difference what kind of stipulations that you put on it or what you intend. The new owner will come and make decisions as to what happens on that block. If it's on commercial and you have a commercial entity come in there, who knows what it could be? Undoubtedly, it won't be anything like a strip joint, beer joint, or anything like that, because I think there's restrictions as far as how far they could be from a school, church, various things like that. But what if you have a warehouse coming there, and then you've got trucks back and forth all day and all night? It's kind of like on the worst end of the spectrum there. So basically, what I'm getting at is you lose the control of what happens on that piece of property. They have very good intentions, and I respect that. But the bottom line is, once somebody buys that piece of property, it's going to be up to that owner what they do on that piece of property and what the city will allow. Of course, that have to be permitted, and I'm sure whatever kind of entity they put in there will have to pass, all the city laws, codes, ordinances, blah, blah, blah. Personally, I don't know how feasible it is. Instead of just having one entity come in and own and control, pay taxes on the whole block, divide the block back into residential sections again, put houses on it, bring families in. That's what's in the neighborhood now. I know they're in dire straits, and they need to do this, but the thing about it is once it's said and done, they will be out of the picture. With the residents, the rest of us in the neighborhood will be there to deal with whatever happens from now on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Extra.
Enos Tullis, 200 Jordan, directly across my last one. This is a kind of a disheartening feeling because I don't like to go and ask for something when I have friends with the church that wants that, so I don't like feeling opposing, but it's my home. I've lived a life in Cleveland my whole life. I was forced from a beautiful home that wasn't restricted because of mobile homes. Moved out directly picked up my property. So I sold the home that I thought would be my last home. I came here and located the property from friends at the church. So I built it. I said, this will be nice for the community, and I want to make it my last home. And I love the church being there. It's just a great neighborhood. I never thought in my life, 65 years in Cleveland, I live in town. I didn't care for the city codes and stuff I had to go through, but I did it. People helped me, and it's great. And now after being there 2 years, I love it. This is really scary to me if you let it go commercial. And I respect the church. They need to sell and make all the money they can for theirs. They can still sell as a residential. Someone comes in and puts homes in there, wonderful. Because the city has codes to keep the homes private. So I'm just asking it remain. I don't want to be a casualty person again where it's like disheartening and I've got to up and move. I'm asking you, this is my home, I love Cleveland, please leave it as it is.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask a question that when people come to the podium, you ask them where they live.
I apologize. I
Most
forgot
everybody
Mr.
has,
Jones.
but, please do that.
Yes, my name is Linda Longley. My home is the rock home up on top of the hill, very nice. And it was built by my grandfather,
And the address, ma'am?
W.C.
The address.
512 West Houston Street.
Oh, thank you.
It was built by my grandfather, and it was inherited by my mother. And now we live in a home. We also bought property down below from my aunt and uncle that lived here, Billie Jean and Joe McMahon. And this home means a lot to me. And it means a lot just to the neighborhood and to the people that I remember that used to live in those homes, even the ones that are not here anymore. I lived in the little blue house next to our rock home now. And I just love being here. And I just can't imagine anything that is going to take away from this subdivision. I would hate to see that. I really would. That's just my feeling. That's all I can say. So please consider this.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good
Just
evening,
state your
David
name.
McDonald, 650 Jayhawk Road.
Thank you, sir.
With all deference, Pat, what's gonna happen if there are, now, you have options. Seller has options, the city has options. On your commercial rating, it could be an unlimited commercial, or it can be registered as a commercial property with restrictions, is that not correct? So if it goes commercial, whether the church agrees or not, the city has the power of implementing covenants or restrictions on what the development is on the commercial side. The church can do the same thing in their bill of sale. What I would prefer is to see it as a residential, because if it's developed under residential, the city as well is going to have restrictions and covenants in place as far as what can be built there as far as houses and such. Same applies on commercial. Last thing we want to have is this be zoned as commercial, which I firmly oppose. If it's passed as such, who's going to say it's not going to be a tire shop? Who's going to say it's not going to be, it could be anything if there's no restrictions, correct? We all have to live with restrictions, we all have to live with covenants. The same applies with this, whether it be restricted to residential, which is what I would agree with. Have you guys been to the area?
Yes, sir.
Okay, besides the church, what do you see? You see houses, you see families, you see kids. You don't see businesses. So I would implore on you folks to keep it that way by keeping it residential. But if you decide in your wisdom that you want to go with commercial, I would deeply respect and hope that you guys would consider the entire neighborhood and impose restrictions and or covenants as to what type of business, commercial business, will be allowed in that area. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to speak? Mr. Van, would you like to?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think it's appropriate at this time to let the applicant kind of address some of the concerns that were raised by the citizens in closing.
And I also wanted to take this chance while we have all our neighbors here. If there's anybody here that doesn't go to church anywhere, we'd like to invite you to First Baptist Church this Sunday. We'd love for you to be there. I would respectfully disagree too, that I believe that we can put restrictions in to a sale. I I think that I have been assured, in fact, that we can do that so that we can make sure that nothing goes in. And like I said, that would hurt the neighborhood or anything like that. That's our heart. I'm going to say something that unless you are a Christ follower, you're going to think I'm being very naive. But we've thought a lot about this, and I put it in the Lord's hands. And I believe the Lord's going to take care of this. And I've been praying that He'd bless everybody, the city, our church, and everything like that. We have been assured by our real estate person that we've been consulting with that it will be very, very difficult to sell if it's left residential. Our fear is that we'll be left with a block full of buildings that are just degrading if we can't sell it. That was their recommendation, that the highest and best use of the property would be if it was commercial. So we have asked for that we do that, knowing that we can bring stipulations to this. We believe we can control what goes in and how it goes in there. I think we can bring things in, something in that could be of great benefit to the community that maybe the community doesn't even have at this point. So, once again, I hate all of the concern that this has caused, and I get that. But like I said, we're asking for the city to help us, and we don't think we will disrupt the neighborhood, and we also believe that we can benefit our community, our neighborhood, and we are committed, as we have for over 100 years, to continue to do that. So, thank you for the chance to speak. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Hi, my name is Carolyn McWaters. I live at 401 West Hanson. My home was built in 1928. I'm directly across the street from the First Baptist Church. We bought it from Mr. A.W. Grimes in 1970 and have been there ever since. It's a great neighborhood. We're proud to be there, and we're lucky to get a house there at that time. I think this will not be a good deal for it to go commercial at all, but also residential. I think it could be sold residential. I have people ask me on a regular basis if there are any houses for sale in that area, because people want to live there. It's that good an area, it's that inclusive an area, it's just very special to all of us who live there. And I just would ask y'all to leave it residential if you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blunt.
My name is Weldon Fuller, and I live with my beautiful wife in the Sears house, right across from that church. We've lived there and happy, as she's let you know already. We want to retire there. We have retired there, and we would like to live our last days there. I think all this boils down to the fact, I know the gentleman don't want to hurt the community, but the fact is, by looking at these people right here, you're hurting the community. And I want to know, I wonder what Jesus would do. Would he speak for the money, or would he speak for the people?
Mr. Burlow,
Yes.
for the record, could you state the address, please?
312 West Houston.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to say one more thing. Kelly Axton again at 312 Doris. And one thing that I have not heard mentioned is the fact that this being zoned commercial can also affect these residents' tax dollars. Because if I'm seeing this correctly, this is going to cause their taxes to go up. And that's just, and we're talking about a lot of people here that just, this is not something that's feasible. And another thing, I'm not here to preach by any means, but I think that God puts people like us in places and in positions to stand up and speak for the residents. And I feel like that's why I am put in positions to do what I'm doing. And I think that God has called me to do that. And I think there are reasons for that, and I just felt like that needed to be said. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Nikki Coates, 1007 South College. The last thing we want to do is hurt the community. I always want what's best for Cleveland. I also want what's best for our church. A few things that Brother Tommy didn't point out was, that one of the oldest buildings there on the block, not the oldest, but one of them, it's been abandoned for about 12 years. It's in that bad shape. It's a 2-story building around back. I just want to note that. And the property is valued according to the agent, 2 agents that's walked the property for us. It would be worth a whole lot more. It's in better shape, but they both said somewhere between 1 and 1.5 million is what we should ask for and settle for. Somewhere probably on the low side of that. Even though there's 29,000 square feet of space. Can't afford to remodel it, can't afford to remodel a fraction of it. So we can't occupy it. Hate to let all that go to waste. Your choice will decide that if we let it all go to waste. And it's about $400,000 to demo all. It's going to sit there for who knows how long it's going to sit there. The next biggest reason to do this is our church population is decreasing like every other church around here. But our children's department is growing. The children now occupy the oldest building. You guys know the oldest building on the corner. The only one that we're using right now is one of the children. So we lose families. We use because the parents bring their children in there and it's packed. It's dated. Restrooms, the shape they're in. So our children's director and her unpaid staff are begging for a new facility. We can't afford one. So the money we get from the selling this block, if we get to sell it, will go to the new children's building on the grassy lot next to our FLC. That's all. We want what's best. If you say no, don't work on new, but just like he said, it's in the Lord's hands.
Thank you, Mr. Coates.
Sam Parker, 100 South Mason. Our house is residential. We are right behind Sunmark, Rose Bar. I can throw a rock and get church's chicken. I also own a small business in Cleveland, so I know how hard it is. So we can just sit here and say, keep it residential, tear it down, build houses. It's not that easy. And let's be honest. Is there much of a difference between a coffee shop and a church? Business is a business. A funeral home's a business. Bailey's barbecue is in a church. That's a business. Like where does the neighborhood end? So I don't care. I think, I'm sorry, I'm out of breath. I don't talk in front of people. I'm pretty sure. we've already seen what happened to Porter, Kingwood, and New Caney. It's coming. It's gonna swallow Cleveland. So, yeah, I would much rather, I'd walk, me and my wife, walk our kids around that block every day. We walk past the church at school. But I would much rather live by a locally owned business than a Sam's Club distribution center, than a Buffalo Wild Wings, because it's coming. These commercial businesses, the big businesses, they're coming to Cleveland. So we can keep it Cleveland owned, or we can fight it and we're going to stop H-E-B, Walmart, all of them when they come. No, not. So that's my 2 cents on it. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kevin Hughes. I am located at 306 West Houston Street, right across from the furloughs here. I'm actually I've been in the residence for about 6 or 7 years now. If anyone remembers in the area, I'm the one that had the big truck that was parked right there. That was the easiest way for me to be able to park and be able to get to work quickly when I had to do my stuff. This is my first time ever having of learning about redistricting and turning from residential to commercial. I got the letter in the mail, and then Miss Ann called me earlier today about it. My concern was, as for what everybody else hears, is that it would be better for if it was to be it'd be better to either be a residential, or it could be better if it was a commercial with deep restrictions. So my guess would be is, for what my best thing would be is if it could be residential to have a couple of new homes there, or if it would be possible to even to try to minimize the tax increases that we've been dealing with the last couple of years, that if it was commercial, it would have the restrictions of being something strictly prohibited to be something that's just residential. I would say like maybe apartments or something like a small deal apartments. That's what would be my only probably acceptance if it ever became commercial. Thank you for y'all's time and have a great day.
Thank you, sir. Floor is still open.
Cheyenne Parker, this is my husband. We live at 100 South Mason, right behind Rose. We kind of came as a last minute. We heard about this. We actually were looking at a piece of property that is across the block that we called about. So we own Prime Iron. We built it from nothing, just us. No investors or anything. It's been very difficult to even, like he said, find a property like for what we need, for the size, to follow regulations, all that, and I'm not complaining at all. So I'm kind of on both sides. I don't necessarily say yes or no. I just want to bring up a couple things. Like he said, we do, and no disrespect to anyone, everyone has their own opinions. We do walk our kids around the block a lot. We love that. We love that it's quiet. We love to be able to do that. We have a little boy who's learning to ride a bike. You can't do that in a super busy street where, you know, there's a lot of traffic and stuff. So I love that. But as a small business owner, there's not a lot of places for small businesses. There's, like for us, there's CVS is closing down. Okay, well, we don't have millions of dollars to do this either. So I would say that if you did zone it as commercial, I would appreciate there be restrictions for, depending on the kind of business. Because yeah, you wouldn't want a tire shop. You wouldn't want, you know, garbage in the neighborhood. It is a pain in the butt to be right behind Rose. We're laying there going to bed at night, we hear music blaring. So I see both sides of it. So I personally don't have a problem. My parents bought our house probably about 20 years ago, and they're passing it on to us. We live there now. When they first bought that, they owned there and they owned 300 West Houston. Both were commercial properties and residential. They've both been zoned to just residential now. But at one time, there was commercial properties a little bit, I say into the neighborhood because we're right there on that line. We're not in the main road, we're right behind it. Those were commercials. Those businesses, my mom had a little, it was like a gift shop type thing that didn't cause problems. She got to have a commercial business, it didn't cause problems. To my knowledge, I don't think there was anything in the house we were in. But like he said, I wouldn't see a problem with a coffee shop. I wouldn't see problems with certain things like that. I don't want any business going in there, but depending on if you are able to put restrictions, like I said, I don't know all the rules, but if you could do that, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But we're also not in the same, we're not in our retirement home, so I totally respect where all of you guys are coming from. That's a different thing. I'm coming to you from a different side saying how hard it is to try to have your own business and not work for a huge company. So yeah, I guess just maybe if there could be restrictions on it, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I personally would have more of a problem with an apartment complex because now you have a small block, but now where's everyone parking for all of those? So to me, that would be a lot more traffic than a coffee shop or a small restaurant or something like that where, you know, they're gonna close at night, there's not gonna be traffic all throughout the night or something like that. Yeah, just maybe a couple other points of view Cindy hasn't brought up, and I don't mean to disrespect anyone at all, that's just where we're coming from.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Can I ask the attorney a question? Can you restrict, once it goes?
We're gonna get into that when we get to the action item, but I am gonna address it.
And you know about how many different things that can be located in a commercial? About 2 pages in.
Yeah, Fred, we'll talk about it. Okay, but I am gonna clarify what restrictions mean. I just want to, this is a public hearing, let's receive input, and you've done this enough. And then, but I am gonna address it.
Everybody's not gonna go back there and hear it.
No, we're gonna do it right here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just, after we get all the public comments, we're gonna deliberate all these issues. Now,
Yes, sir.
So the church made a nice argument about, needing to sell and bringing taxes and the value of the property. And so I would say that the value of the property is the value of the property, and the taxes received are, I presume, similar whether it sells as a residential or a commercial property. It's not worth more as one property versus another. All we're talking about is the expediency of the sale. It's still a $2 million property, whether it stays it stays residential or goes commercial. So the tax revenue is the tax revenue, it's just a longer period of sale. That's the contention for turning it into commercial. That's the only argument I've heard for making it commercial. So.
Currently, there's no taxes, church property.
But when it sells.
all right, that's not appropriate. Really, let's just have public comments, we're not in a deliberation of those things.
So you're not receiving any taxes now, I understand that, if the church property, when it sells, it will become a commercial or a residential property. So perhaps you could address if those taxes are the same for the city.
I'm absolutely gonna touch on taxes.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Does anyone have any further public comment?
I'd like to readdress this.
Yes, sir.
Rick Axton, 312 4th Street, 200 Dunham Street. Depending upon what's built on this piece of property, if it is zoned commercial and somebody comes in and buys the whole thing, they may, of course, cover the whole property with a building. They may just put a building in one little small portion of it and just leave parking on the rest of it. That's going to affect how much tax revenue you get off of it. If you go back and you zone it all residential, you cut it up into individual lots, and you put a house on each one of those lots. You've got way more tax revenue coming in on multiple buildings, you know, that piece of property as opposed to just one little small building maybe. There's so many variables here. We don't know what may happen with it. But I want to address the control of it and stipulations. What's the word I'm looking for here? Restrictions, I'm sorry, restrictions. Let me just tell you what I've run up against here in the city of Cleveland, okay? We've got ordinances, and over in the subdivision that I live in Tanglewood, that is a site-built homes only subdivision. It was rezoned, or I don't know if it was ever zoned before, but now it's zoned as a site-built only subdivision. On two of the streets over there, Helen Street and Hortense, there are mobile homes. I don't have anything against mobile homes, lived in mobile homes all my life, off and on, nothing against them. But when you've got a portion of your city or a piece of land that's zoned for one thing, it kind of becomes a little wishy-washy if you go in there and you start changing things. So I'll tell you what happened over there. Anyway, the ordinances used to say that all the mobile homes that were over there were grandfathered. Okay, if they moved the mobile home out, they had to come back in and build a site-built home. So you walk down the street one day, I see a mobile home moving out. Next thing you know, next day they got a double wide coming back in there. I come up here and I complain to the city about it. I was told that they are allowed one upgrade. I got the ordinance, I looked at it with Mr. Barnhill and the young lady who used to be an officer right here. I find out they were not allowed one upgrade. So I left it with them and I said, okay, what are y'all gonna do? Go in there, make them mobile home out, enforce your ordinance, what are you gonna do? So, I don't know, maybe about a year went by, got busy, came back, and I asked them, I said, what about this mobile home? You know, they moved it out, it's supposed to be a site-built home, well, they're allowed one upgrade. They changed the ordinance, and it was dated about 2 weeks a month after I came in here. I came up here and complained about it. So, restrictions, laws, rules, zoning, all of that can be changed. It doesn't matter. So, you know, that, all of that said, that long spiel there, I would say just leave it, or zone it residential, leave it residential, because if you zone it commercial, yeah, anything can happen.
Thank you, Mr. Axton. Anyone else?
It really is not appropriate if we all come up multiple times. It's okay if the chair wants to recognize it.
It's just from my heart. This is just back to many years ago, and I can just remember all of the homes and the people that lived there. And it was called, I think, the Dunham Addition, and that's what it was built for, in family homes. And that, you know, the Baptist church has never bothered me, but this is going to, if not left.
And why can't you hear from the residents?
So, you absolutely can, but it's a public hearing, so everybody gets an opportunity to
As
speak.
many times as we want, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further comments?
Yes.
My name's Regina Ott, and I live at 503 Dudley. I'm a lifelong resident here of Cleveland, Texas. My parents were, My dad bought and sold commercial property all my life. And he also had rental property all over town. He built Denny's One Stop, which is still there. He ran McAdams in the House of Bargains. He built what used to be fairs. Mike might remember that. It was back when we were kids, and Eddie Smith worked there. So I would like to say this. We are a residential area there. My husband and I have lived there over 40 years. And when we bought our home, it was a humble abode, and it still is. But we have worked very hard. In fact, he put off his retirement for 2 years so that we could remodel our home and make it what we wanted for the rest of our lives. We've raised 3 children there. We have 19 grandchildren who are in and out there on a regular basis. That is their home as well as far as grandparents' home. We saw the city swimming pool go by the wayside there. We've seen a lot come and go, and I personally do not want a commercial business put in that location at all. Yes, we are a neighborhood. Not all neighbors know each other. I live 3 doors down from Mr. Hand, and this is only the second time I've ever laid eyes on him. So, you know, maybe we do need to be more neighborly. But putting that commercial property in there is not going to accomplish that. We have enough in that neighborhood. Yes, it is a quiet neighborhood compared to most, but I am a non-sleeper, and I can tell you that there are people up and down those streets 24 hours a day in the middle of the night. We don't need any more of that. When my kids were teenagers, I had one child who would come over and I left my car door open and sleep in my car because he had no other place to go. So yes, there's plenty that goes on in that neighborhood, but it is our home. And while First Baptist Church is definitely having some struggles, and I'm sympathetic to that, but you have no control over what is going to actually go in there or what it's going to turn into. And I would like for each one of you to stop and think, would you want this in your front yard? Mike, would you, Mr.? No, not one of you could say, yes, ma'am, this is something I really want because it's going to help our city. Well, there is more important things in this world than the almighty dollar. And I would appreciate it if you would take that into consideration in dealing with this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. All. Okay, anyone else before we close the meeting? All good? Okay. We now adjourn the public hearing section. Consideration and possible action to issue a final report and recommendation to the City Council on an application for zoning change from R1 to GC from First Baptist Church for location listed at 400 West Hanson, listed below, and an ordinance amending the city's comprehensive plan, comprehensive zoning and map. Okay, floor is open. Anyone?
Madam Chair, it may be appropriate to address some of the issues
Yes, sir.
that came up first, and then we'll jump into it. And the only reason I said is really a public hearing, you're limited to the opportunity to speak. I just didn't want multiple people. I didn't mean to upset the people. Just so everybody knows, what the commission is doing tonight is not making a final decision. All they do is make a recommendation to City Council. City Council makes the ultimate decision. I've heard a lot of talk about restrictions. The city is not in the business of restrictions, so we cannot impose restrictions. If we zone this commercial, it becomes commercial. So anything that's permitted in commercial is permitted on that piece of property. The only thing the city does is regulate things like setbacks and those kind of parking, those kind of issues. But uses that are permitted in commercial, we do not. So I believe any restrictions they're talking about would be self-imposed. A restrictive covenant, you probably all live, not in that neighborhood because it's an old neighborhood, probably doesn't have any deed restrictions anymore. But I assume y'all are all familiar with what those are. So you can add restrictive covenants, deed restrictions to your property. I'm not sure how that would work on your property, maybe that anybody that owns or buys that property can amend the restrictions. Y'all would have to be the benefactors. I don't know exactly what your real estate guys are talking about, but really restrictions are not for the benefit of the restricted piece of property. They're for the benefit of the adjacent properties. And unless they are part of the restrictions and enjoy those same restrictions, I don't think they have standing to enforce them. That being said, as everybody understands, we as far as limiting exactly like a coffee house or something, the city is not in that business. The taxes were brought up as well. The city adopts a tax rate, so it doesn't change by use. Commercial tax rate is the same as the residential tax rate. We have a tax rate. The only thing that changes is your assessed value, which determines how much you pay. And yes, typically commercial property is assessed higher per dollar than residential. But like the gentleman pointed out, when you subdivide this into however many lots, I think it might be a wash. But I mean, really, I just want y'all to be aware that it's not going to affect, if it was to be changed, it wouldn't up your taxes. Versus if it stays the same, you're going to have the tax rate's tax rate. Let's see, what else? Oh, the mobile home thing that you brought up, I know what happened there. So the city had an ordinance that was outdated. The state and the occupations code adopted this law. I guess the manufactured housing lobby is pretty strong. Back then they adopted a law that allows anybody that has a pre-HUD code, pre-1976 manufactured home to go in there and upgrade it. Or if it's destroyed by fire or something, they can replace it one time. And that preempts anything you do. So even though we had a law that said you had to build a site-built home if you move out that manufactured house because it's non-conforming, it's not a zone manufactured housing district, they still get to replace it one time. So that's probably what happened there. In fact, I'm almost yes.
Question.
Yes.
I had to go back and read the ordinance. I'm not mistaken, it says that if they do that, they can't add on to the house, which would be.
You're not supposed to enlarge the size.
So that's another thing that's happening there.
I'm glad you brought it to our attention. In fact, I encourage you, Angela Smith right here, our city secretary.
I should have.
Well, we don't have the resources at the staff level.
That's neither here nor there. That's just, I'm just saying that as an example.
Yes, sir.
To what could happen further on down the road.
So does anybody have any concerns about restrictions? I mean, I just don't want y'all to be confused that somehow the city can impose restrictions on exactly what type of business can be, because we just can't. It's discriminatory on its face. That's all I have, unless y'all have additional questions.
I got another comment.
It's really, since we're out of the public, directed to the chair. I'm just the lawyer, so the chair will recognize anybody that would like to ask a question.
Yes, sir.
Taxation. I know we have a tax rate, and the tax rate hasn't really changed over the last few years, but my valuation on my house has gone up drastically in the past 5 years, which means that I pay more taxes.
Yes.
So just because the tax rate doesn't go up, it's the same, the valuation of the real property that's on the property before the tax.
Yes, sir. I agree.
Remain the same, or on these things.
I agree. I deal with that too. I don't live in Cleveland, but we all deal with it.
Okay. Does anyone on the committee have any questions or discussion?
I will say this. Pastor made the statement that the valuation, if they were to sell, is about 1.5.
I didn't do that.
You're right, I'm sorry. Mr. Coates. Okay, is that just the land itself, or is that with the property? Okay, because on here, the county has it at $3 million.
That's what a real estate person.
Right, yeah. I'm just making sure I understood
He said 1.5 plus.
Anybody want to discuss?
Well,
Or
my feeling, go around and talk about, first of all, thank y'all for coming out, everyone. I mean, goodness gracious. I think, as far as I go, our responsibility to the citizens of Cleveland and for what we're here for is to listen to the citizens and to look at what the best use is for property in and around Cleveland. While I definitely sympathize with the church's plight right now, I think the citizens of the area have definitely spoken.
Also, I'm kind of caught in the middle on this as a member of First Baptist Church. I want to do what the church has to do or wants to do. As you all know, I'm almost always opposed to any change in zoning ordinances. And had everyone out there is my friend. I couldn't do that to them, even though initially I thought, well, it's no big deal to help the church, but I just don't think I would be in favor of it. Simply because if we can't control what goes in there, what if some apartments go in there, low income housing, something that the people there certainly don't deserve that, and I wouldn't want it by my house.
Because you may can restrict the sale on this go round. But once that, you may be very selective on who.
Yeah, that's not exactly right. I mean, what they're talking about doing is having a covenant run with the land.
I think they're talking about they could be selective on who they sell to for what its intended purpose is, but you lose that.
You do lose it. Mr. Henry, to your point, just remember that, and citizens remember this too, it's underlying zoning is residential. It sounds like it's a historic district. That's the first I've heard of this. Are there certain restrictions associated with being in the district? Are there? I know, but I can call it historic, but it's, like I live in a historic district in Houston, First Ward, and they limit what kind of house we can have. How high it has to be 1910s appropriate. I don't think is there anything like that in your neighborhood?
Now, if a homeowner wants to go farther than historical record, there are things that they have to fulfill.
Okay.
Certain
Is
things.
that individual houses though that do that?
I don't know if anybody's done that, but it is a district which we could. We can't do that in Grand Oaks at this time.
I agree. No, I want everybody to be aware that the two examples that Mr. Penry used, low-income housing and apartments, are both residential and permitted in residential. And that's why I bring up the restrictions issues.
But it's not our one.
Not the apartments.
Right, they would have to come in.
They could put in Habitat for Humanity, have single-family houses.
Well, that's R2 though, is it not? This is zoned R1.
It's R1. No, apartments could not. I'm sorry, you're right.
Apartments could not.
They're residential, but they're in R2 permitted.
In this area, it would have.
I was just curious if y'all had
on-site
any
built
kind
homes.
of restrictions built into your neighborhood safeguards.
I did talk, because we looked at a piece of property like last week, one that just popped up for sale. And when I asked, and I was just a real estate agent, but he did tell me, the new house, I don't know the address, but the new house that was built in the neighborhood, it's gorgeous. But he did say that, gorgeous house. They did, we talk about all the time. They did say that if a new house is built on the other piece of property that we were looking at, it would have to be similar to yours. So I do know that about
Interesting.
restrictions.
Well, I say that only because we don't enforce restrictive covenants, private deed restrictions as a city, but I mean, you all have the ability to do that. So if there are certain restrictions that may limit what they can do anyways, it'd be worth looking into that.
One of the reasons the city went to zoning was because my understanding was all deed restrictions had expired. And that was when the zoning became.
Yeah, it's an old neighborhood, that doesn't surprise me. They can't pass that.
Right. So from zoning, this is where we put together the best that we could. We had public meetings where people come in and have their input, things like that.
Okay.
So we went to zoning to establish some protocol in areas of buffer zone the first in the line being residential being the most important.
And that is, zoning ordinances are put in place primarily to protect residential areas. As it's really its intention.
And in most cases, some people said that some big companies can come in and bring in like a sand club warehouse. So there is no way a big company can take that small property and make it a big facility to the same, especially when you got the trucks in there. Especially with the size of the streets, it's not really that responsible for big reasons.
All right. Thank you, sir. Okay, is any discussion left with the committee? No?
I'd like to make a motion that, we reject the ask to go from R1 to general commercial and remain.
Is that your final report and recommendation?
Yes.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Davis. Okay, we have a second. Okay, we will make the recommendation. Oh, everybody in favor?
Again, this is in favor of recommending the denial of the proposed change.
So both of you are no's?
Well, let's get clear. Are you voting yes for denial, or are you voting no for denial?
I'm voting no.
So you want to change it to commercial?
No.
So you want to keep it
Let's
residential?
keep it real simple.
Okay.
Raise your hand if you want residential. Okay, raise your hand if you want commercial.
I'm on it.
Well, it has essentially the same. You know the rules, Mike.
Okay, the motion is passed. We will remain.
Recommend to council that it remain
We
residential.
will recommend to council that it will remain residential. And
Doing the right thing.
I make a motion to adjourn.
You can make a motion. You're the chair, but you're also amending.
I make a motion that we adjourn. Got a second?
Hey, everybody, hold up.
Yeah. All right.
We need to do this in front of
Here we go.
council, because council ultimately will vote which way it goes. So we've got to do it again.